We find out in talking with Alex, I forget Farrah's name.
Farrah's name is Alex. Kirk's name is Adam.
Adam. Yeah.
$20 says that the original name was Eve.
Oh, probably.
20 whole dollars.
This rod in the back of Harvey Keitel's neck, we learn through his talks with Adam that he is actually imprinting his thoughts and his knowledge onto the robot. And we start seeing that the robot, every time Harvey is moving his head, the robot is moving his head and he's learning. And it takes a little bit for him to learn what's happening and how to function properly. But he starts kind of toying with Harvey Keitel's character, wouldn't you think, Kieran?
I think that there's a couple different ways to interpret it. I think that there is this way of, because clearly from the beginning, the robot and Harvey Keitel's character are connected. There becomes a point, and you can either point it to the lack of thoroughness on the writer's part for this film, or the writers just wanted to be super ambiguous and abstract with it. But they do a real chicken and the egg kind of situation, because you can't necessarily tell throughout the plot who is in charge, because it feels like Benson is making all these calls to the robot to do all these things. And then at certain points, it feels like the robot is going independent of Benson. But then we find out later in the plot, they have a very integrated vision. After he finally gets the robot together, Hector, strange things begin to happen. Like the second he starts to use him, like this military corporation science fun thing, whatever the fuck, they sent this robot and it immediately sucks. So you'd think like, okay, let's take this thing apart. And that's what they initially want to do. But Benson is clearly the villain of this piece, and they insist on using it. And like, what was it? I think it was 20 minutes into the robot being built, like he killed the dog.
Yeah, it wasn't very long at all. And you knew something was going to happen because he just kept creeping on the dog through the plants. You just see those eyes wandering in the darkness.
And the way they built this robot is he has this long, wide torso and these very long trunk-like legs, but just the skinniest little arms and two little fluorescent tubes as eyeballs and like a mini mouth that he doesn't talk, and 4 little clampers that he uses to grab things. And clearly he can't grab things with the clampers that are like natural, because he'll chop them fucking half. And he just wobbles around, because I remember thinking at the beginning of the movie, man, the effects in this movie is really cool. The script isn't all there, but I think that there is a good movie in there somewhere. And I do really think that. But as it progresses and they rely heavier and heavier on the robot, it just looks like someone in there is like an amputee, and they're making him like work the acceleration and deceleration with his mouth.
Yeah. Well, you can tell that they put themselves into a corner with that character, because he was so blocky in his movements and stuff like that, that about halfway through the movie, they give him the ability to control other inanimate objects or other machines. And that kind of was their workaround for it, I think, at least. But yeah, you could just tell that they had this idea for this robot and they built it. And I mean, I think the thing stood over 8 foot tall, something like that. And it probably looked amazing, but then in the execution of having to make that robot move, it just didn't work. It just didn't function properly. Like in its movements, it just looked so weird. And then whenever it used its arms and stuff, you could tell that they had to actually speed up that footage, and that arm is actually moving at a snail's pace, and they're keeping up with it. And then it picks up its thing that it needs to pick up, and then it comes back up. And then they just speed up that footage in post, and it just doesn't look right, because you can definitely tell that it was sped up.
So yeah, like this robot is just like murdering dogs and sniping titties left and right. And Kirk Douglas is obviously just so distraught about this, and he wants the robot taken apart, and he's going to report the commander to whatever authoritative figure they have coming over them whenever this eclipse stops, because this is a 22-day eclipse that flies by. Time is nothing in this movie, and it pisses me off, because it's not like a thought-provoking way. It's in a, oh, this is where the story is, so this is how many days along we are. And it made me viscerally angry.
Well, and poor Toto, too, because, yeah, the robot kills the dog, but in the most brutal way possible. He splits the dog in half.
No, in like thirds.
Yeah. And then the dog's just like laying there with its tongue out, and it's got this like ketchup consistency blood. It almost looked like a claymation, like a Wallace and Gromit cartoon.
I almost fucking forgot. The first thing that Benson does when he boards the ship and Toto shows up, the dog's name is Sally, but we're just going to refer to it as Toto, even though I think it looks a little bit more like Winn-Dixie, but that's beside the point. First thing he does is he grabs this dog and inspects its butthole.